Joining us right here on the Bottom Line KE. We want to say asante sana for always creating time for this program. My name, as always, is Eugene, and Nangwe took some time to get here, but of course we want to say thank you. And tonight on our conversation, we definitely want to have this very important question. And of course, we said that it's important that someone somewhere has to have a conversation that is solutions focused. And that someone is us right here at Lookup TV. And of course, the question we're asking is the politics in Kenya. Can it be cleaned? And how can that happen? Of course, that is what is going to be forming the basis of our conversation tonight. And who else better to be with us on this conversation other than Reverend Dr. Linda Ochola. She is the Executive Director at Hatua Trust. Thank you for making time to the program.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming physically here.
Thank you.
All right. And Dr. Ezekiel Mutua is joining us virtually, and he is the CEO, Kenya Film Classification Board. Dr. Mutua, thank you for making time for joining us. Linda is saying that umemcheza, you are to be here with her. Alafu sasa, you have decided to join us virtually.
I apologize, Linda. You should have told me Linda was coming to the
Amejitetea. Right. Thank you so much for making time. Remember, you who's watching us right now can be part of this conversation, and all you need to do is just tweet us, and you can always add the hashtag #TheBottomLineKE. You can tweet me directly at Eugene and Nangwe, or you can tweet at Lookup TV. Let's start off this conversation from that particular point of view, and I always say we always go ladies first on this one. I want to ask you, Linda, the topic itself, can Kenya's politics be cleaned? Of course, cleaning means that there is some dirt.
Yeah.
You cannot clean something that is already clean.
Yeah.
And I want to hear from your perspective, from where you sit. Do you think there is any need for any cleaning, actually?
Yeah, I mean, I do, and I think many Kenyans do. I think people have said that we Kenyans love politics, and so even when we're not in an electoral electoral period like we're entering into now, Kenyans are constantly talking about politics, as we should, because it is about how we are governed and how resources are allocated and how we are living and doing life together. And so I would say that a lot needs to be cleaned up as far as Kenya is concerned. When you think a little bit, reflect a little bit on the history of this nation, actually what we are seeing in the life of the nation right now is not really strange. The fact of the matter is that right from immediately after independence, I think the nation of Kenya, or the newly independent state, had a lot of hopes with regard to how things would be much more just as opposed to what they had been in the time of the colonial state. But as I thought through this a little bit, I think it is my opinion, Eugene, that we never really deconstructed the colonial state. The colonial state existed to serve a small elite. And unfortunately, independent Kenya continued on that trajectory. The structures that have been set up in terms of our public institutions essentially safeguard the interests of a few rather than looking out for the interests of the majority.
So the cleaning we're talking about here could be something bigger than just what we think.
Yeah.
All right, let me bring in Dr. Ezekiel. Dr. Mutua, I think you have done a very good job from where you sit as far as cleaning up the airwaves is concerned, ridding the country of dirty content. Now, when we come to politics, I mean, where do you see the need for cleaning to happen? Because Dr. Linda mentions that indeed it is true that there is a lot to be done as far as cleaning up our politics is concerned.
Thank you very much, and good to have you, Linda, also in this conversation. And I think, like you said, Eugene, the very question itself presupposes that our politics is dirty, that something needs to be done, and that some cleansing, some sanitization of our politics is necessary. In my view, it should begin with somebody feeling angry enough, and for them to be able to feel like that, they must then be on the other side, not on the side of the dirty politics. Because I think we lost the virtues of national leadership in our politics when it was commercialized and tribalized, and it lost the perspective of issue-based. It became sectarian, tribal, interest-based, and commercial enterprise. And I think that's where the challenge is. And the thing is, given the critical role that politics play in determining the welfare of wananchi and the citizens, whether you are dirty yourself or whether you are clean, Christian, Muslim, any religion, or whether you are even an atheist, that you live in a country and you elect people to represent you to make policies, and those policies govern how you, or determine how you are governed, then it becomes so essential, like in Kenya, that we have the best. It is a tragedy that we would want to shy away from politics, call it dirty, and stay away. And there's a saying that the punishment given to those who refuse to participate in politics is to be ruled by mediocres or by mediocrity, by people who would be less qualified. Because we fear, we don't want to get our hands dirty, we don't want to soil our reputation. And I can tell you, it begins from there, by those who consider themselves as having a role to play in sanitizing this politics, participating. We must get our hands dirty, roll our sleeves, and try. Let's fail, but fail trying. I think there's no other way. In my view, it should begin with us getting angry enough, but also mobilizing a critical mass, Eugene, because I think getting angry is not enough. You need to have a strategy, you need to have the wherewithal, the money, the mobilization skills. But I think the model of Obama, how Obama started his leadership, and this is where mentorship and identifying leaders early in life begins, and then coming in with a solution that is not a quick fix, but that is tested, would help. Because Obama was a student leader, he himself and a story, he had overcome challenges, being a child of a single mother, went to university, he was doing very well, editor of the university magazine, becoming a community organizer, and starting small but rising steadily and strategically. I think that's where we need. Let's not start by saying that we are the holy ones, we can jump in and we clean it. Let's start by having, what are the issues? Where does the shoe pinch? And how do we resolve this? And are we willing to get our hands dirty, to risk our reputations, and do the right thing for the sake of the country?
Right. I'll bring you back a bit later on an issue that you mentioned earlier on, that it requires people or someone to be angry to a point of saying, you know what, enough is enough. Why are we allowing this crop of people to lead us in this way that we feel is not the right way or the country deserves? But Linda, Daktari also mentions the aspect of, we have people who can fix the country, fix the politics, but they seemingly are not ready to get into this so-called dirty game. They don't want to make their hands or get their hands dirty. And these people include those even who are faith-based leaders, you know, people who have led the flock so well and are now being challenged. You can also lead the country now, or you can lead the country through different political positions, but they feel like, no, politics is a dirty game. Who will clean it?
It's a great question. I think there are two things I would like to say on that point with regard to the engagement of faith leaders in the political arena.
Yes.
One of them, as you say, is that maybe people shy away because they feel that if they engage, they are likely to be compromised. And they are right. The fact of the matter is that many have tried and have been outsmarted or outwitted or silenced or compromised. And so they are right, although I think that Dr. Mutua puts it well when he says, you know, the solution then is not to keep off, but to be able to really think things through and strategize and be able to engage, having thought it through. It's not enough to just go in there on the basis of inspiration alone. So I think that religious leaders or faith-based leaders are right sometimes by holding back. But even if they don't engage in the political arena in the sense of running for office themselves, they have a mandate and an obligation to speak into the life of the nation. The fact that your religious leaders or faith leaders, and I put myself in that category, I'm not really pointing fingers, you do not have the luxury to be disengaged. I mean, scripture is replete with all sorts of passages that talk about the care that God has over his people and the obligation that faith leaders have to care for that flock and therefore to speak into the life of the nation. In one of the church arena in which politics was being discussed just recently in June, reference was made to Jeremiah chapter 1 from verse 17, where Jeremiah is told to speak to the leaders in society and to not be afraid, even though they themselves are going to be hard-hearted, they're going to make things difficult for him, but he's supposed to speak to them. And so I think that engagement is in a myriad of ways, not just running for office, but taking up the position. The church needs to take up its position to be the salt and the light. I think we fear being compromised, but we have to engage and be extremely strategic about it.
Right. And talking of positions, I've seen you on various occasions, even you taking to the podium to share the word. And of course, Reverend Linda says that the men and women of the flock, I mean, do not just have the obligation of participating politically, but also leading their congregants when it comes to taking a stand on political issues. Someone will say easier said than done, because there's always this fear that, you know what, whenever the religious leaders stand up, they're told, stick to your lane. You know, this is politics and this is how it is played, especially here in Kenya. I mean, when you stand on those podiums yourself, Dr. Mutua, how easy or how difficult is it for you to deviate or to just say, I'm gonna share this particular direction when it comes to the politics of the day? I mean, share with us your thoughts on that.
It is tough. It is tough, Eugene. I can tell you, not easy. I always say it's not easy to be a good person, let alone being a Christian leader. It's not easy being just good in this country. It's not easy being honest. The very foundations that the Asian tigers, the founding fathers of Malaysia, Lee Kuan Yew, Singapore, Malaysia, the Asian tigers as we know them, laid, and there were structures that supported the firm position that they took to lay a moral foundation. They are not there today. Today, we seem to be a valueless society, and we must come from somewhere, either from the standpoint of our Christian faith or religious faith, or just integrity, whatever measure of integrity. But there must be a critical mass that believes together and can stand up for one another. I see this with the Muslims, by the way, with tremendous respect. Someone like me, if I was a Muslim, being a CEO and as vocal as I am, you find you are surrounded by faith leaders and the brothers and sisters who stand for the cause. And people can't just push you around or remove you unless there is a good reason, of course, following the law. Not the same with Christians. So there's even bigger fear for Christians to hold positions or to stick their neck out, because there are consequences. And when the chips are down, you're on your own. And then people start saying, well, I have a family. Then the family start saying, must you do this? Because there are consequences. And sometimes the family bears the brunt of our public life. And someone said if Jesus and a wife, he probably wouldn't have died. I don't know, but just a matter of, but you are held to, you are torn into these responsibilities where the question is being asked, do you think you can make it? Do you think you can provide the solution? And the sacrifice is much more. To answer your question more directly, Eugene, you got to do much more when you are a Christian to live an upright life, to hold a public position. You got to do 10 times more than an ordinary person, even for you to count for something. But let me also tell you that we are not hopeless. For example, my position and my faith, which I confess, and I see people insulting me and thinking it is fake. This is what I was on 23rd of June, 1984, when I gave my life to the Lord. I became a student leader. I was a CU chairman, school captain. And I changed school from riotous behavior, indiscipline, even winning in games and inspiring students. In Tala High School, where I was in A levels, I remember tremendous change. And I look back to those small miracles and the walk with Christ, and I feel so confident. But people don't believe, people don't read that history. We don't connect with our history to say, who is this guy? Where did he come from? So that we can judge him from, a perspective of history and values and things that he stands on. We tend to think people are fake. Eugene, another journalist, Linda, just another reverend. And people are so dismissive. So it's the critical mass, it's the support system, it's the structures that you surround us and cheer you on and say, we are together in this. You are our best striker. It's like a team of football. The best striker will be given the ball and they'll be supported by the team to score for the team. But we don't have that now. Today, for one to rescue Kenya, my submission, and I don't want to sound pessimistic, it will take God himself. It will take either a Trump effect in what happened in the US, where society gets so low that people say, now give us anything. Anyone with the courage to say no to these sort of things, it doesn't matter whether he has other accusations around him or not. Or the way of Rwanda, where people degenerate into genocide and kill each other and butcher each other like animals until now any solution. Or even Uganda, where by the time Museveni came from the bush to save Ugandans, the army would come into your house and take your wife and your children, or take your car, take your house. There was nothing that you would own, and people were getting into a point where then there's no point of living, because if your property is not your property, your family is not your family. They sank so low, they were looking for a savior. So that when Museveni comes now and is tough enough on the army, then they can embrace it. These are the scenarios that I see. But let me conclude by saying God is never short of solution. In his own time, something will happen in Kenya, and something will make us come back to our senses. And God will bring someone, will stand for uprightness, and will be able to be propelled into the highest office. How that will happen, and whether they will come from the right tribe, whether they will have the numbers, the money to run the political campaigns, and so on. This is something we cannot countenance now, but I am sure God is not short of solutions. Now, let me say this. To cleanse our politics, one doesn't have to be a Christian. But one has to be so disciplined as to preach water and drink water and not wine. And it takes a lot to say one thing, live by it. The saying that you can take my word to the bank, that I can sacrifice everything else and say, my calling, like Nelson Mandela, is to set the country on the right path. I do 5 terms and I relinquish leadership, because if you overstay again, people start asking questions, and we are such judgmental society. We don't even celebrate people who are doing well. There will always be people who are tearing you down. Our politics are partisan, they are sectarian, and they are tribal. And therefore, if it's not our man, no matter how good he's doing, God will intervene. I want us not to lose hope. Eugene and my sister, Dr. Linda, something will happen. We don't know how, but let us prescribe what we can do now. I am a CEO.
Yes.
I'm a CEO. Let me give my example, Eugene, if you allow, just as in summary. You know what I have done, Eugene and my sister Linda? I've tried since I joined KFCB to lead it like a country. Honestly, I looked at it and I knelt down, and when I got to KFCB, I asked God, if this was Kenya, how would you want me to lead it? And I read Psalms 23 to my staff, and I told them this is for me, Psalms 23 is an appraisal of the leader from the perspective of the led. And I told them, I hope by the end of my tenure, you can be this confident that you're a CEO who provided, that your jobs were safe, that you are well paid, that the company was running well, that we expanded our territories, that everybody was exposed. There was equity in the sharing of resources. Let me tell you, right now you are reading the papers. I'm advertising. Today I was shocked. I advertised for jobs last week, and by today there are 22 positions. By end of today, we end over 5,000 applications. Yeah. Now, when COVID came, I wrote a memo to the staff when I saw the letter from KQ saying they are laying off, they are doing salary cuts. I told my staff, we have believed in a mighty God since I joined you. As your CEO, I want us to believe no one will lose their jobs on account of COVID. Yeah. I can tell you we have more money right now. We have surplus. We have more money than before COVID. And I'm not saying I'm perfect. I'm not saying that's the best model. I'm just saying I took this small position to be like the country. Because if the staff, that 100 plus, almost 200 of KFCB are saved, their families are saved, their jobs are saved, there's no harassment, you don't have to know the CEO for you to be saved, I'm contributing to the narrative of the president of the country. Yeah. If there is integrity at KFCB, if I lead by what I say, and if staff can see, and they can have confidence. Let me tell you, ultimately, Eugene, people want security of their jobs. They want to put food on the table. They want to be able to pay for their school fees for their children and be allowed an environment where they grow. So I train people. I pay for their masters. I expose them. The cleaner in my company has a passport and they travel abroad. And we care for each other. We hold fellowship. I'm not saying it's the best model, but I'm leading it like a country. I'm saying, when I lead, let them say there was a CEO who was honest, who cared about everybody, who was not discriminatory, who was not harassing people, where people never lost their jobs on flimsy grounds and so on. And at least there was peace during the reign of Ezekiel Mutua. Now that can translate, and God can give me another position awfully, and I hope I can translate that as well if I become the governor of Machakos County, and so on and so forth. It starts somewhere.
You see, you said you run the entity as a country, and someone could be asking then, why not go for the, shoot to the moon immediately and not go for governor position, which you mentioned that, God willing, that is what you'd be eyeing. I mean, why not then run the country and not run as a country?
Allow me to interject and to contribute to that point, if I may, Daktari.
Yeah.
I think there are a couple of really important points that you are making. First of all, the transformation of a country does not rest on a single institution, which I think is the point that you're making, Dr. Mutua, that in a sense, multiple leaders across multiple platforms and institutions must make the decision to take charge of those platforms and to aspire for excellence and integrity, and that through that, the total transformation of the nation will come about.
It's a concerted effort.
This is what I'm hearing, and I think he's right. Yeah. Think about it, Eugene. Many times we talk about our politicians and we talk about grand corruption at a certain level, and yet the fact of the matter is that we come up against corruption from the top to the very bottom. Even if I'm not talking about the COVID-19 scam of 10 billion, where only less than 5% of people in the city of Nairobi receive the cash transfers, you run into corruption on a daily basis. If you even want to go and get your Form 1 admitted, and you find that Form 1s have been admitted who didn't have the space, yours who got the letter, and the marks is not able to access that school, we've got a disaster across board. And so I really think that Daktari is saying a really, really important point. Not negating yours, that people ought to aspire for public office. Obviously, the size of the platform has an implication on the number of people that we can impact. But overall, it will take more than just those in elective positions to bring about the total transformation of the nation. Right. I think that's what I hear from what he's saying.
Yeah, but Dr. Had mentioned when we were starting the conversation, I'm hoping that your sound is working well. I hope at the controls we're okay. Dr. Mutua, can you hear me? Are we good?
Yes, I can hear you.
I wanted to ask you, On the onset of this conversation, you mentioned that it takes someone or people to be angry enough on the issue of how the state of affairs are. What are we waiting for? I mean, ni nini tunangoja ama tukasirishane zaidi namna gani, so that now we can be able to say from the nice journey that you've taken us through, how you manage KFCB, for you to say, you know what, enough is enough. I don't want a governor position. I want to go for the top seat and manage this country the way I've managed KFCB. Look at my track record behind that. Mheshimiwa Mutua, unangoja nini kukasirika zaidi?
Eugene, I don't feel I'm ready now for the country. I go around the country. I think the last 1 week I had meetings in Eldoret, in Kisumu, in Mombasa. I change, and when I go there, I get surprised, by the way. I get very surprised by that people know me and what I stand for. It amazes me. Mm-hmm. This week I was speaking at a huge meeting for Stima Sacco in Mombasa. And I was surprised because I thought somebody recommended me. I have a relative there. And I realized the management didn't even know my relative. Mm-hmm. They are telling me that they normally do a survey. And the first one, they got PLO Lumumba, and I was still featuring. Then they got Wafula Naptola, and Ezekiel Mutua was featuring. Now this time it was overwhelming. Bring him on. He has to come and talk to us. And then those are some of the, for me, benchmarks. I try to look at it and say, well, so if I was to throw myself into the ring, would it amount to anything? But there are many other factors: financial capability, a lot of things. I think just like Trump, like I told you, Trump, if you watch the YouTube messages from 1973 or thereabout, he was being interviewed about the same things and being asked the same question that you're asking me. And it was not until 30-something, almost 40 years later, that he won in a way that nobody expected. I don't know. I don't think this is the time right now. Like I've told you, and Linda has put it very clearly, leadership doesn't have to be at the top level. We got to begin from our homesteads, our families, our communities, and give the best that we can. Like I told you, Psalms 23 is my benchmark for an appraisal of a leader who provides, who restores, who comforts, who shields their people. Because it says, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Provision, comfort, restoration, security, psychological security. People feel at home. When you read that chapter, you get a sense of a kingdom where the citizens are speaking about the leader, the Lord being the leader. And I look at it and say, can people in my family say that? Can the members of my family say that I do that? Can my colleagues at KFCB say that? It's a challenge, and I think I'm work in progress. Right. I am not ready for national leadership in my view. Everything is always in God's plan. When I joined KFCB, I left a job and took almost 200,000 pay cut to join KFCB. I was Secretary of Information, doing very well, and just been coronated by the president. My star was rising. Everybody would have thought I was being appointed as CS or PS. I looked at this after digital migration, which I led with CS Matiang'i, and I thought I needed to step in and guide the process of expanded spectrum, the availability of gadgets and the internet across, and how it is going to affect the society. I was so moved and so ready that I was ready to take a pay cut. I actually had a permanent and pensionable job, but I left it to go on a 3-year contract, risking the future for this, because I felt moved to do it. Right. Because I had been a journalist, I was director of information, I was secretary general of KUJ, I had worked as a journalist with the Nation for 9 years. I was coming from a background where I thought I was ready now to undertake this new challenge. Right. Eugene, that question goes for many other people like Ezekiel Mutua, like Linda, like yourself. Yeah. I followed you from your days in Rwanda. I have followed you, and you are a journalist. One could also ask, why not you jump in? And I think everything works in its own time. God's timing is the best. The important thing is, what if impact are we creating right now in our small spheres of influence? How are we running with integrity? How are we operating? How are we allowing God to prepare us for bigger responsibilities? Because if you cannot be faithful with the little that you are given, it will be difficult. And all of us have to go face situations, be prepared by God like Moses in Egypt, face situations, be tested, where Moses finds an Egyptian and an Israeli fighting, and he kills the Egyptian and Paris, and he's in a crisis, the fugitive. We go through all those processes to prepare us. And a time will come when the burning bush will appear, and you'll feel God is calling you to it. For now, that time may never come. Will I say then I didn't do my bit? I want to do it now.
Right.
And I want to take KFCB, like I've said, as a country. I want to take my family and do the best that I can and ensure that my circles are happy. And like Leader said, if you can make impact in those small communities, and then we do cumulatively, Eugene in your own circles and sphere of calling, Linda in our own circles, and all of you, both of you, I know you, I follow your stories. You're doing amazing things. And I wish we can say, God is working in us. Let's pray for one another, support one another, and aim higher, and pray that God will open a door for our impact to keep progressively increasing to a point where we can take higher responsibilities from where we are.
Right. Thank you. I think we're going to keep this clip just the way the video, the interview with Donald Trump and Oprah Winfrey. I think we're going to keep this video and we pray for you, Daktari. Reverend Leader, let me bring you in on this one. Do we as a nation deserve what we're going through as a country as far as leadership and those challenges you said in the beginning? Because they say that choices have consequences, and in many cases we are the ones who have actually played a major role in electing the leaders or the people that we have today. Do we deserve what we're going through as a nation?
Okay, I don't know whether I can answer the question, do we deserve it? Let me just kind of rephrase it and try to attempt to say it the way I understand it. If you were asking me, have these chickens come home to roost? They have. I'm not sure if it's exactly the same thing as saying we deserve it. I started off by saying that it appears from the historians that the colonial state, which existed to serve the interests of the elite and of a few, was never really deconstructed. When the new elites came up in independent Kenya, the critical question for them was, were they going to redistribute the resources in such a way that the needs of the majority would be met, or were they going to revert to keeping everything in terms of resources to themselves? And that has been the question for successive presidents. And I have to say, according to the historians and according to what we are seeing now, the politicians have always, and the elites have always positioned the country to act in terms of its politics based on resources for the few. And they have played the ethnic card so that we never really think about the bigger issues. Dr. Mutua, you talked about issues-based politics. We never really have those conversations about access to opportunities for all. We often talk about things from an ethnic basis, and so we are talking about this community has been marginalized. It's time for these people to eat. It's time for these people to be recognized. When is this community going to come to the table or to top leadership? The politics of the nation has been played that way historically, and so you are asking me, do we deserve it? I'm not sure we deserve it, but those chickens have now come home to roost. And so what we are experiencing now is just the natural outcome of the direction that the nation has taken. Now, let me say something about societal, the life of a society. The life of the society is that cultures are created, and those cultures perpetuate themselves in such a way that even if somebody wanted to do things differently, number one, we ourselves are socialized into it so that we never really stand aside from it to critique it. But then even irrespective of individual decisions, we find ourselves perpetuating the things that we have found. Quite apart from politics, whatever it is. We came and found that ugali is eaten in Kenya. Let me move away from politics. I came, I found it there. I found it was being eaten with mboga of different kinds. So I've eaten it. I hardly question it. And in fact, I am now feeding it to my children. and telling them that this is the standard, these are the healthy things that you should be eating.
And they will also do the
And
same.
they will also do the same for future generations.
Yeah.
And so what I am saying to you is that this is definitely a natural outcome of where we have come from. And many people do not want to stir the waters.
Yeah. But in the
some of us
scriptures
see
you
that
talk
it's
about
wrong, but we don't
breaking-
want to stand aside.
Yeah, we've always been hearing about breaking those chains. Can these chains be broken in this sense of, yes, we found our politics like this.
Yes.
This is how it has always been like. It is me inheriting my relative who passed away when he was or she was in power.
Yeah.
It is mtu wetu, siasa za mtu wetu and all that. What do we need? What does it take for us to break those chains then? What do we do now?
I actually have a suggestion, and I thank you again, Daktari Mutua. You triggered my thinking when you talked about the fact that you, as a CEO, have run the entity where you're responsible as a country, and you have taken responsibility to make a difference there and to lead it according to a certain kind of standard in terms of integrity and excellence. And then I jumped in and I said that my conviction is that it is not, we cannot depend only on the political leadership to change for things to change in Kenya. So can Kenya be cleaned? Yes. Allow me to make a suggestion and to allude to an example from history. It may not be a perfect one. There are no perfect people, no perfect generations. But there is a group in England, a group of Christians, many of whom, a small group, I think it was about 6 people, maybe 6 to 12 or so people, who in their time, the principal issue, or one of the principal issues that they were dealing with was the issue of slavery. And this group of people, because they had shared political views, shared social views, aspired to run for office and to work over time for the abolition of slave trade and of slavery. And they actually were successful. So you're asking, can it actually be cleaned?
Yes.
Here's what I want to suggest, and this is what Daktari's contribution made me think. It will take networks.
Networks.
It will take networks. In other words, multiple institutions, multiple individuals. I loved what you said about mobilization. I loved what you said, Daktari, about strategy. This is not going to be done by it's not the era of the big man or the Lone Ranger, a single individual who sort of rises up and comes in and does a clean sweep of the country. It will take concerted effort on the part of many to bring about the change that we deserve, which is why I really resonated with his point about saying that for him, where he is, he has begun to take charge of that particular domain and to make a difference
others
there.
To do the same in their spaces.
Exactly.
And then eventually we have a whole nation.
And to have a groundswell. In fact, I put it to you, Eugene, that if an individual, and we have seen it, an individual sort of aspires to run for office, and many have, some have succeeded, but they are few, to bring about change. What happens, we've had this statement over and over again, corruption fights back. I think that the people on the other side will quickly outsmart and outstrategize this individual, isolate them and take them home for lunch. I actually think that it is critical that you have multiple individuals, multiple institutions working together towards a common goal. But many times we don't take the time to do the background work before we launch out into the deep, so to speak.
Right. And I want to bring Daktari on that same note, because Dr. Mutua, our networks in our heads have been framed to just believe that it is the politician who actually can change our lives. We have been networked to think about or be in an electioneering period. The moment we just cast our ballot, have that ink even before it dries out, or when we wipe it out before it goes off, we're already still campaigning for the next election. And Reverend Linda is saying that, you know what, we need to make the nation believe or feel that it is not just the politician that can change the nation or change the politics. It will take networks. How do we tell the common Mwananchi or the person who has been designed to feel or think that it is that presidential candidate from their community who's running that is the one that will change their lives, that is the one that will make their lives better?
No, quite away from that, Eugene. Let me tell you, be effective where you are. design your strategy from, they say, think globally but act locally. Think globally but act locally. And globally could also be just outside the arena, but within the arena, be a good human, be a good leader. And leadership is not a CEO. Leadership is just serving people. I mean, offering solutions. Let me tell you, like I told you about the story about COVID. When COVID came, I looked at it and I read about pandemics and the 1918 Spanish flu and others. And I was so convicted in my spirit, this is going to take a while. So what will happen to the economy? We are going to elections. We have such a divided whatever. And I looked at it and said, the domain that God is holding responsible for is my family, the one I'm immediately answerable to, and the Kenya Film Classification Board, where I'm the CEO. So what did I do? I sorted my family, organized in the way that I could. Zoom meetings, ensuring they have internet, and how best they can be protected, my children can be safe, and so on. Then you move to the next stage. In my place, I assured my staff that they will be safe. The families that are there, that nobody will lack, they will have their jobs. How I was going to do it, I had to think. We migrated our services online. We started making more money. And of course, through prayer and effort and thinking and networking. I can take you way back when Netflix started streaming in Kenya, if you remember.
Yeah.
I opposed the streaming of Netflix in this country without a regulatory framework. And I was taken on by very big people. I was told I was undermining ICT. The president is known for ICT. Kenya is a hub of ICT. Our president has been recognized, and you hear speaking a different language. But let me tell you, South Africa, I didn't know they were watching. My counterpart and his management flew to Kenya to come and ask me about this conversation. I didn't know they were bothered about the same issue. Indonesia was concerned about the same. Several countries, and by just raising my voice and being courageous and being covered, even when I was being opposed by very senior people, I didn't know the world was watching. The things I'm doing about moral values and the power of media and the films. In 2019, just before COVID came in the following year, I had the honor of my life to be the chief guest at Nollywood Film Festival in Lagos. You know, with all the businessmen in Nigeria, everybody and the industry that is fastest and richest and the best, the fastest growing. Yeah. Then in December, I was the chief guest in Hollywood, California, Hollywood Film Festival, all expenses paid. And the people invited me, 9 out of the 11 directors are gay people. Yeah. And people here think, you know, gays, but they voted and said, we want that guy from Africa. And when the chairman came to pick me at the airport, he told me, please don't tell us the things you want to hear. We have invited you because we think you have a narrative and want to listen to it. And let me tell you what I'm realizing increasingly is that those networks are falling in place locally and globally. And that the day I will take the next plunge, the impact will be felt. And a lot of people will resonate. Let me tell you, if you provide real solutions, you may not know who is watching. If you are effective where you are, and you are honest, and you uphold integrity, and I'm not saying a moralistic approach to life or holier than thou. I'm saying just doing it, having the courage to say it, believing in what you living what you believe, and having the courage to take on risks and to be able. But ultimately, it's got to be about people. How can you make the lives of others be better? And the power that God has given you, the resources God has given you, how can you spread them so that you become a good custodian of the things God has given you, the knowledge, the resources, that there is equity in the sharing of those resources, in promotions, that when someone is sick at KFCB, they don't have to struggle coming to work when they are sick. If a lady gets pregnant and they do so, we have expectant. In fact, a lot of people, I was joking with my staff, that a lot of them seem to be giving birth during my time. I'm asking them, what were you waiting for? Because there are so many girls who are getting married and they're giving birth, and we have a very good policy. When I joined, I'll give you another example, and I'm not blowing my trumpet. I'm just trying to show you simple things. There used to be a very nice package for the insurance of the CEO. And it was such a huge difference. And the question I asked is, the CEO is the most unlikely. I'm picked outside my corridor and I'm dropped at the corridor of the office. Why would that guy who is dropping at a country bus be having a lesser insurance? And I standardized. People didn't believe it, but I standardized. I tried to get promotions. I tried to cushion the jobs of my people. Majority of them are on permanent and pensionable. And I'm saying that little, if that's what I do and I die, let me do it like there was no other job that I was called to do.
Yeah.
Ultimately, I believe God will use the faithfulness in me leading 100 people faithfully, those families living, feeling secure, their jobs being secure, by God's grace, feeling that I tried my best, and them trusting in the leadership and feeling safe and owning that organization, and then buying into the vision of the CEO, that all of them speak the same language.
Yeah.
You would think all of us, including that's the other Sunday, but one, we attended a Sunday service with Honorable Gideon Moi, CS Mosheru, PS Koimet, and our regional manager in Embu, who is a Muslim. We were in a church, and she's the one who was coming to do sensitization in a church. We have created a family. I'm telling you, and this is a strategy. I'm not doing it just for the sake of it. I'm trying to make the Muslims and the Christians feel we have a role. We can live by integrity, be contented with our salaries, but have impact in our areas of calling and do so much and live together in peace and in harmony, support one another, and they're buying it. You can't believe that a Muslim can speak in church and connect with the church, and vice versa. When that lady was getting married, we stayed at Karioko until 2 in the morning, attending our wedding in a mosque.
Yeah.
That's the kind of family I'm saying. Just do what you can.
One step
in your
at a time.
area of calling, Eugene, my sister Linda, there's no country out there. A country is a people living together in a set of, whether family or company or whatever, with shared values, beliefs, and aspirations. And even the three of us who are in this conversation, we can agree and say we'll be having regular talks and be able to share our testimonies. In fact, what I wanted to do today, Eugene, is just to share my testimony. I hope it will not be taken out of context, like this guy came to brag.
Yeah.
I am saying we can do it, and there's nothing wrong with saying what you have done, if it is real, because we fear to tell our story.
Yeah.
The world is telling its story. We fear to get into the internet. Bullies are in the internet. They are parading nudity, obscenity on the internet. And we who are good, we don't want to populate that place. Even if you have nothing to say, quote a Bible verse, put a quote there. Say something nice. Let's populate that spectrum with good content. Let us do something. In other words, don't just sit and think leadership is out there with the politicians or with the president or with the minister or with the MP. You are the leader where you are, Eugene. You are leading people. I have seen you invest. I saw you leave TV47. I have followed your story. You are a leader. Pray for God to help you to walk with integrity. Linda is in another world. I don't even know why you brought her to match with common mwananchi like me. You are so powerful. In fact, I will read something I have posted on my Facebook, if you allow me, Eugene, and I finish. I'm so admitted about this because you know what I posted about, and I didn't think about, but it says our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It's our light, not our darkness, that most frightened us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, to be gorgeous, to be talented, to be fabulous? I am sure you know about that quote.
Yeah.
This is what we need to focus on.
Yeah.
The problem is not that we are small. The problem is that we don't know that we are big, and we don't want to say we are big. We want to hide and pretend, no, as we are not the people. We are the people. Let's do what we have to do today.
Let's do what we have to do today. And Linda, you know, that message is supposed to actually resonate also very well with the electorate, especially those who have ended up being manipulated by politicians through voter bribing through being used to actually instigate violence against their neighbors and colleagues and friends. Why is it that it's never easy for us to pluck off from that kind of usage? Every 5 years,
yeah,
we forget about this person is the one who gave me salt when I did not have salt. This is the person who drove my wife to the nearest clinic when we did not have any means of movement and we had an emergency. How do we ensure that what Dr. Mutua has just said resonates very well, especially directly to those who are often used by the politicians during the electioneering period?
Dr. Let me say thank you for sharing your testimony. It's very compelling.
Yeah.
I think people can tell when somebody is authentic, and I think from what I can tell, this is authentically you. But apart from just the authenticity is the point that you're making about what comes out of us and being confident in who we are and who God has made us to be. Allow me to answer your question with a quote from somebody who I think is becoming a good friend and somebody who has challenged my thinking as far as citizen engagement in the life and the health of the country is concerned. Well known to us, I think, Bwana Irungu Houghton of Amnesty International said this just recently to me and some other religious leaders who are meeting under the auspices of Hatua Trust to reflect on the fight against corruption, improving our society and cleaning up our politics, as it were. He said this: the most important thing to remember is that the people in power are never as many and as powerful as the people with power.
With power and
the
in
people
power.
In power, the public officers, state officers, they are never as many or as powerful as we, the citizens, who are the people with the power. As our Constitution states, it is for the people, by the people. So how is it that a few people have been able to talk big and successfully manipulate 47 million Kenyans? That's really what you're asking.
That's the question.
And I am saying Dr. Mutua is on to something. He's saying that we should not be afraid to shine at a personal level with regard to the platforms that we occupy. And I am saying this in response to what you're saying. Your question is, how do we keep from being used every 5 years?
Yet we are more powerful than the people we put
Precisely.
Yeah.
That we must understand, as the Kenyan people, that those in power are relatively few. In fact, they are so few as compared to the people who have the power. We are the ones who have the mandate to put them there. We are the ones who, in fact, put them there. What needs to happen then is a shift in our understanding. That those who we put there must become and must be accountable to us. They must be able to do things according to the standards of bringing about equity and justice and prosperity for all. And in fact, when they don't, number one, we should hold them to account. Number two, if they don't deliver on prosperity for all, we should recognize our power to remove them. What they do, however, is to talk big. And then what they do is to run around us in circles and to position the conversation, the narrative that Dr. Mutua is talking about, in such a way that we see ourselves in these ethnic enclaves rather than wrestling with the actual issues, which is the socio-economic issues and resources, access to resources and opportunities for every one of us. So what needs to happen here is a shift. And I want to commend you, Dr. Mutua has commended you, that in a very real sense, what you are doing here is shaping the narrative and the conversation.
Right.
What happens is that we end up believing what we hear most often. If I tell you today ugali is green and the vegetables are white, you won't believe it. But if I say it often enough, it becomes like the truth and like the reality for you. And so what I think that the politicians have so ingeniously done or disingenuously done is to lie to us in such a way that we have swallowed it hook, line, and sinker. We have believed it. They terrorize us. They manipulate us. They use us for their ends. And I think not enough of us are speaking out to remind us, just like Dr. Mutua has said, how powerful we are, how magnificent we are, how much we as a citizenry have the ability to determine the future of our nation. And of course, we are not, I don't also want it to seem simplistic. we're not entirely innocent of the wrongs in this nation as a citizenry.
Yeah.
We ourselves have been caught enough times with our hands in the till.
Cookie jar.
We've done it. And so what happens then is also when you are compromised, you lose your authority to speak and to challenge the status quo. So number one is that we need to stop believing the lie. And number two, we ourselves as the citizenry need to clean up our act.
In your opinion, do you think there's been this debate? Is it moral or morally upright for religious leaders to welcome politicians in the pulpit and also to allow them to do the fundraising? Because this has been seen as from some quarters that the religious leaders are being bought, and of course it will depend where the bread is buttered, and that's why you've seen a lot of religious leaders today do not have that moral authority to stand up and just say, no, we do not like the direction the country is taking or the direction politician X is taking. What is your take on that?
My take on that is that, yes, to a huge extent, it's important that you sufficiently stand apart from a system in order to critique it. Mm-hmm. If you become co-opted by it, it becomes very difficult to critique it. In biblical language, let me say, for example, once Elisha's servant Gehazi had been compromised and he had taken the riches that Naaman offered, it became very, very difficult for him to stand apart and just to do his job. And so, yes, I think that politicians are crafty. I think that they are manipulative. I think that they play on the greed as well as the needs of the people, and the church is not excluded. And I think that it is critical that the church as an institution stand apart in such a way that its voice can be heard with clarity.
Right. Dr. Mutua, I mean, your take on that, because we've heard from different quarters the reason why the church and the religious leaders, not just the church or the faith-based leaders, as before, they used to stand up and just say, you know what, this is the direction we feel the country is going, and it's a wrong direction, and this is what we're advising our congregants. Today, we don't hear much of that. We have had people arguing that the men of cloth and women of cloth have gone to bed with the politicians who Reverend Linda says are terrorizing us, are crafty, and all that. What's your take on that?
Absolutely, not quite. I think there's always a season, and our God is a God of seasons. He takes humanity through seasons. I think we have some of the most vibrant, charismatic preachers today. I can tell you, more courageous than the Munges of this world, the Okulus. We have them today. We have allowed one narrative to dominate our perspective and to inform our reality. And you can see you are quoting it, Eugene, with all your education and expertise, but that's the truth. You represent a lot of people. There's something called the dominant values of our people and the dominant story. There's a Nigerian poet called Ben Okiri, and he said, if you want to poison a nation, poison their stories, make them negative, have what Chimamanda Ngozi calls one-line story, one single story, the danger of a single story. That when something like Linda said is repeated, told over and over again, it begins to become the reality that we know. And it's not true. It's only that and this is the psychology that advertisers use, that exposures, they say you need about 21 exposures for it to stick in your mind. And you start even harming. You can even start harming beer advert without knowing. If you allow those 21 exposures to hit you time and time again for 21 times, it will be enough for you as a reverend to start harming Imara Kama and Simba. So a reality has been sold to us, a single line, a single story, that churches have been have been run out of town. Pastors and preachers are no longer as powerful. I can tell you, we have never had as powerful preachers as we have in David Oginde, in Callisto Odede, in J.B. Masinde. There has never been. It's only that now with the so many multiplicity of information, media, and Christians shying away. And that's where we were defeated. When people were migrating to this space and the world order was preparing to get into the mobile telephony and use the mobile phone for more than just calling and texting and M-Pesa, as we remained with that, the world went to innovations. The world went to using this to reach our children, to radicalize our children, to move into Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, and influencers became socialites, became other people, and narratives were sold that bombard us with more information, that we don't listen to Bishop Oginde, we don't listen to Alan Chula, Julian Chula, we don't listen to our preachers of the day. They are listened to, and in their circles, they are very influential. If you sit under Linda and listen to our messages, you become a very faithful convert. How do you think these churches are building very strong enterprises? Because there's a very faithful following that listens to them. But the message that is going cumulatively is the one of politics, negative politics. That's what we are watching on the media, obscenity, pop-ups that are coming and polluting the environment. And for me, that's where I come in. My concern has been, how can we have the UN setting goals for protecting forests and protecting the environment, but we are not taking care of, we are not addressing the issue of moral pollution, which is worse and is getting worse by the day. Yeah. And we're not talking about these things. And when you talk about them, you are tagged or you are labeled homophobic. You are labeled this and the other, and you are fought and you are trolled on social media, so that people who consider themselves dignified and with a name and reputation to protect, they don't want to get there. You are told, don't exchange with those people. Don't, you are too much. And there seems to be like you are more intelligent and you're more cool if you keep off the internet. Now, you keep off, but our children are there. You keep off, but that's what is forming the narratives. And we don't have sufficient counter narratives. So that, Eugene, the question you're asking, what became of our leaders? Nothing became of them. We have courageous people. They are CEOs like me, and I can tell you, not the only one. I take stock. There's a gentleman called Gideon Muriuki, the MD of Cooperative Bank. My brother, I wish you can sit with that mighty man of God, anointed to the core, with money and and doing a lot. This is a guy who can sponsor a mission and change an entire place and send money to reach out to the unreached, but people don't know about him because he's doing it quietly. And we are so many of us, I do write the networks and the people that I know are standing for, even if we don't talk, I try to reach out to them. Everybody has their own style, but we are so many. Right. The problem is, what are the channels that are selling the story? And that takes me to the 7 mountains of influence. Who are the influencers? Who are the people who shape the opinion, set the agenda, and make you think the way you are thinking, and then engage us in this conversation of defeat, hopelessness, and dirty politics? Who does that? It's the media. It's what we watch. Right. And so we believe our media, our politics is dirty because we see that. But I can tell you there's so much good work going on. There are conversations like this going on, but they are not the dominant conversations. The dominant conversations about politics, murder, rape, who stole what, who insulted who. And the media, and that's why, Eugene, my war with the media is, if you don't set the right agenda, if you allow only negativity and skepticism to define the agenda setting, and you bring the news values to be what is, when a dog bites a man, not news, when a man bites a dog, and the man bites dog, controversial, bizarre, and unusual, that is what makes news, then we end up in a situation where we are discussing non-issues. I just told you, the story of KFCB should be told in headlines. I would be one of the most celebrated CEOs. Yeah. I am rated by SCAC, different boards, 97, 99. Every year I've raised it from 88 million. We are now worth 2.1 billion. That story will never be told. What you are hearing now, and now there's actually a real sensational campaign to remove me. You'll be reading a lot of funny stories about me that will be written, and they die. They have no merit, and they will die. And nobody questions. Was that Mutua? Nobody questions, because they are being done right now as we speak. And I know all those things. But look, I have been there before. I was Secretary General of KUJ. You know how much I was fought then, Eugene.
Yeah.
So my take is that there must be people who are strong enough to say, I'm going to create a counter narrative. I'll stand for what I believe to be the truth, and they empower themselves.
Right.
And Linda, I like people like you. You know, sometimes even this doctor thing behind your name, it is not just for prestige. Sometimes, yes, prestige, but sometimes it helps us to sit on the table of men. Yeah. Because these things matter, I can tell you. The reason I went to school at night, when I was director of information, I did my master's, registered for my PhD, and going to school from a very busy office with global engagements. But I was saying, so that when they start now looking even at these things, I can say, Chief, I can publish, we can talk, we can discuss philosophy, right, and the philosophical paradigm. In other words, we need to empower people that way, Eugene.
Right. Yeah.
We got to go and have a strategy that says, now using, and that's why I could not miss your program for anything. You know why? Mm-hmm. Because I want to support you, brother. I want you to keep doing this. If it were possible, if I can get you some money or some support, I want to support you. I don't know how much I can support, but I want to support you with the little that I can support.
Asante sana. This is encouraging.
A powerful platform, and you become a media house to be recognized. I did an interview with Jackie Maribe, and I told Jackie, listen, you have a story to tell about resilience and bouncing back. Don't go into a cocoon of misery. Yeah. Come out, I'll give you an interview. And she's now doing well with the Jackie Maribe show. And I want so many people like that who know the goodness of the Lord to create the counter narratives. I want Linda to go live on Facebook like I see you. I want you to go to populate these platforms with counter narratives. Right. It's a matter of time. Our kids are watching. God is watching. We are not helpless. We need to just be courageous enough to push our story. And using the 7 mountains of influence, identify the influencers in those mountains and work together. And eventually, we are going to form a team where God in his own ways will make us speak the same language, right, and will change this country.
I think the underlying word there is the counter narratives, to be able to counter the ones that give the negative or the narrative that does not build, does not generate. Dr. Harry Mutua, I'll take that as your parting shot, unless if there's any other thing you wanted to say, but I want to bring in Linda, Reverend Linda, so that she can also give us her parting words. Dr. Harry, I mean, a lot has been said. We have spoken for an hour plus. We had agreed that we'll be here for 1 hour. But of course now, where do we go from here? How do we, say that there is hope, and not just hope that we can see from afar, but hope that we can actually walk majestically towards? I mean, where do we go from here?
I really appreciate, number one, the opportunity to be here and to engage in this kind of robust conversation. Dr. Mutua, you are right that there's a lot of good that is being done by the church. I cannot fail to agree with you on that. But I do want to point out that the topic today has been cleaning up politics. Yeah. What I would like to say is that the politicians are not oblivious to the mobilization power of the church. That anytime they can find a captive audience, yeah, and they have capitalized on that. And so whereas it may be so that this is the dominant narrative, I think it cannot be downplayed that where people gather in this part of the world, save for coronavirus, has been in the church, has been in funerals, has been at weddings, and these are the platforms that are there. With regard to my parting shot, really connected to this point, my own, and I circle back to what Dr. Mutua talked about when he made the point about taking charge of our platforms. I mentioned a few minutes ago about the fact that we as individual Christians and as the church must be able to sufficiently distance ourselves from the culture in order to be able to critique it and in order to be able to pursue a narrative or a line that brings glory to God. Let me give, as a parting shot, this passage from Exodus chapter 1, verse 17. This is the story of the Hebrew midwives. And so we are living in this culture that is dominant. You've talked about dominant narratives, Dr. Mutua. We're living in a culture that is dominant, a political culture even that is dominant. In that particular time, Pharaoh, because he was threatened by the Israelites who are increasing in number, he gave an edict to the effect that all the Hebrew boys should be murdered. Ordinary citizens, Dr. Mutua, midwives, and so that means midwives, CEOs, fathers and mothers, can pursue a counter narrative. These women, according to the scripture, it is written about them that they feared God and they did not do what Pharaoh said. I think that's what you've been saying, Daktari. I agree. Whether it means a pastor and their pulpit and determining who appears there and who says what, or a CEO who determines that the status and the reality of those under his employ will be different, or a media house that determines that things that are amplified, the stories about this nation and this society will be different. What I think as my parting shot is that we must stand aside sufficiently to be able to march to a different tune. The Hebrew midwives feared God and they did not do what Pharaoh, what the dominant culture said that they should do. Right. And so I encourage everyone who is listening, as Dr. Mutua has said, take up your position, stop the blame game, do what you can. And let's not be manipulated by the politicians or by those in public offices. Let's not forget that we who are the people with power, the people in power are never as powerful as we who have the power.
Right.
Thank you.
Asante sana, Reverend Dr. Linda. Dr. Ezekiel Mutua, asante sana. I don't know if this is the right time to mention the political vehicle, because that is also another part that you must also determine properly before you get into this new calling that is the governor's position. Ni wakati wa kusema ama bado?
No. In fact, right now I'm the CEO of KFCB. I'm not running, like I've told you. I was just saying, a time will come and we must be, I think everybody who knows me knows that I am planning now and I'm networking. Obviously, I'm not allied to any political party. Right now, I'm a civil servant. I'm not allowed to be partisan. And I also want to be, faithful to the Constitution, so that I am not also preaching water and drinking wine. So for now, Eugene, it's not the right time. Obviously, when I'm running, I'll be looking and I'm aligning myself properly to ensure that you must have seen me receiving the president in Ukambani, meeting with the other leaders in State House recently, and so that can tell you. However, I'm not a member of any political party, not any of those that you might think at the moment. What I've done is to ensure that I preserve my integrity as the CEO of KFCB, but I am where conversations are taking place. I feel so privileged every time when there is a delegation going to State House and I'm considered and I'm asked even to make a contribution or to do one thing, or when the president is going to Ukambani and I'm in the planning team, so that charity begins at home. I'm relating with the right people and with the top leaders from the president all the way. But of course, as a civil servant, I serve the government of the day and I serve the party that that has formed the government. So let's leave it like that, because the issue of the party is not important. When I will leave KFCB, I will leave with a strategy, and I will need your support. Dr. Linda, I need your prayers. I'll keep you guys posted. Please ensure that Eugene, you give my sister my number, and if you don't mind, Sister Linda, let's keep these networks. God did not bring us tonight together for nothing, and I hope that out of this conversation, God can multiply the seed we have planted, both within us and among us, and those who are listening, and say, we stand for what is right. And let me tell you, just be a good human. Keep praying that we become better human beings, that the people around us will feel better with us, that we will provide solutions, and each day we'll do to others as we would wish them to do to us. And as we do so, God will open doors for us to be able to cleanse our politics by cleansing ourselves and cleansing the areas of influence that we are in charge of.
Right. Thank you so much, Dr. Ezekiel Mutua, and thank you so much, Dr. Linda, for making time on this particular conversation. As we had on this particular platform, I think the most important thing is to be deliberate. And right here on this platform, we are being deliberate on the kind of conversations we want to start off. And these are conversations that are solutions focused. We are deliberately understanding that it is important not just to always have shouting matches here and there, but we must be able to, at the end of the conversation, ask ourselves, where do we go from here? What do we do next? What is the solution then for these particular issues? And these and more conversations, you'll find them right here on Lookup TV. Thank you for being a part of The Bottom Line KE. The conversation might have ended within these four walls, but they continue on the social media platforms. Let's keep talking. And of course, the hashtag is The Bottom Line KE. My name, as always, is Eugene Anangwe. Goodbye for now.